Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Let me add again my welcome to 2023 Honda NHL All-Star Weekend. I want to start by thanking Broward County and the cities of Sunrise and Fort Lauderdale for their hospitality. I also particularly want to thank Vinny and Teresa Viola, the owners of the Panthers, the Panther organization, Matt Caldwell, Bill Zito. It's just been great to be down here and to give you a sense of how enthusiastic our guests are. I think we may have set a record with 7,000-ish guests who've come to South Florida for the weekend. And up until a couple of hours ago, the weather was spectacular, so we'll take it. I have a piece of news, and then I'll talk about some other things, and Bill and I will take your questions. But let me start with the news. 2014 NHL Honda All-Star Weekend will be, what did I say?
14.
I did say 14? No. It's been a long weekend. Let me try it again so we have the right soundbite. It's my pleasure to announce, see, that's why it's good Bill's here with me. It's my pleasure to announce that the 2024 Honda NHL All-Star Weekend will be played for the 9th time in Toronto. And we couldn't be more thrilled and excited. And we have a couple of guests who are joining us briefly, Brendan Shanahan, Mitch Marner. They'll each make a comment. We'll take a couple of questions, and then Mitch, I think, has to go to work.
I was just trying to do the math. It's impressive. Mitch was 14 years old in 2014, but we really appreciate it. And, thank you to the National Hockey League, and in Toronto, we're really excited to welcome hockey fans from all around the world and the best players in the league to come to Toronto. As someone like Mitch who grew up in Toronto, we love our hockey and we love to celebrate the game. Mitch?
Yeah, just exactly what Brendan said. I think the city's going to be loving this. Getting all the best players in the world at the same place at one time. Just seeing how the NBA All-Star Game was, I'm sure the NHL one's going to be even bigger. So the fans are going to love it. It's going to be a fun time.
Take a couple of questions before we let them go. Good, take two. Nick.
Brendan, you played in an All-Star game in Toronto. What do you remember about that? And you've helped plan this event, seen it evolve. What do you think will be unique this time?
Yeah, I don't remember much about the game. It was a long time ago. It was 2000. I asked Mitch how old he was in that one, and he was quite young, so he didn't remember. So I lied to him and told him I won the car, which wasn't true. It was. I remember just the excitement and the buzz in the city. Anytime that you're in Toronto for a hockey game, especially something like the All-Star Game, you can feel the excitement of all the citizens, and our fans are excited about it. The Torontonians are excited about it, and we're hoping to sort of build off of that and the excitement about hosting and putting on a great show for all these NHL players and their families and all NHL fans.
Question for Mitch before we let them go? Go ahead.
Mitch, what do the players kind of think? Like, I imagine you like being down here in the sun, and they probably love Vegas. It's going to be cold in Toronto. How do you make them feel at home there?
It's going to be a little colder than here, obviously, but I think just the buzz around it. I think if you ask a lot of people, going to Toronto is always a good place to visit, good place to play in. The fans are always going to be there, so I'm sure the food and restaurants there are pretty good too, and I'm sure the guys are going to enjoy those pretty well, and I'm sure they're going to have to load up pretty heavily for that weekend. A lot of people coming in and out, so it's going to be fun. I think they're going to enjoy it. Like I said, the city's always buzzing, especially for an event like this. It's going to be ready for it, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little colder, but nothing a winter coat can not put on.
Okay. Brendan, Mitch, thank you. Mitch, good luck.
Thank you.
And we look forward to being in Toronto in 2024. Has been a long weekend. Okay, this has been a great weekend. Obviously a little tiring. In terms, as I mentioned, of guests, this is may be an all-time high for us. We estimate the economic impact for being here is somewhere between $25 and $30 million, and it's something that we're proud to do to support a community in which we have a franchise. We activated in the community probably more than we have ever done for any All-Star game or event. We had panels at schools and colleges. We had the Pathway to Hockey Summit, the Future Goal program, the Learn to Play program. This morning, I was at Holiday Park where our legacy project, which was a roller hockey rink, which will be refurbished and revitalized, was dedicated. We did have the All-Star Beach Festival, which the wind kind of put a kibosh on, at least for today, but it was great. We have the United by Hockey Museum. And so we're thrilled to be here. We're thrilled to have activated. Last night was a lot of fun. The crowd here was great. It looked terrific on television. And with that brief state of the league, we're in a good place. The season is playing out very nicely on the ice. When you look, and you know, I know we put out all the statistics, but when you look at come from behind games, you look at the races that are unfolding, when you look at the number of players who are on a pace for 50 or 60 goal seasons, we've got to go back more than a couple of decades to match that pace. We look at the pace for players who may have 100-point seasons. Things are good. Off the ice, business is really strong. Our sponsorship level, partnership level at the league level is higher than it's ever been. And we remain optimistic and excited about the future of the game, both on and off the ice. You've gotten the hard news that we broke, and with that, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly and I will be more than happy to take your questions.
As always, raise hands and we'll get you a mic. Go ahead. Mark Lazarus.
Gary, in light of the Ivan Provorov and the Rangers opting out of Pride Night and the DEI job fair here kind of getting scuttled because of political pressure, do you worry about the message that sends to young players and fans that maybe hockey's not actually for everyone yet?
Well, actually, the Rangers didn't, as an organization, opt out of Pride Night. Actually, I think you were in the building, and they activated across the board, and other than a couple of players not wearing the Pride jersey, we had a very significant Pride Night presence and activation. Listen, you know what our goals, our values, and our intentions are across the league, whether it's at the league level or at the club level. But we also have to respect some individual choice, and some people are more comfortable embracing themselves in causes than others. And part of being diverse and welcoming is understanding those differences.
Next. Hand up. Go ahead, Steve. Steve Moino.
I know you talked a little bit about the escrow situation with the players and salary cap before. Where does that stand in terms of revenues this year and kind of where the salary cap might go up or how much might go up this summer and next?
You can answer that.
There's really no change in our projections from where we were in December, so it remains the same. And we have not engaged with the Players Association on this specific issue at all since December either. They seem to be otherwise occupied on important matters, so I'm sure when the time's right, we'll get to it.
Still on the right, Josh.
Gary, Luke Tardif at the World Juniors talked about the Olympics, and he said he wanted to have an answer by spring of 2024. But he also said the league, the IHF is not a travel agency. Is there like a disconnect between the IHF and the league in terms of what the expectations are?
I don't understand his travel agency comment. I didn't hear it directly. Bill and I met with Luke yesterday, and we each re-expressed our desires to work together on a variety of fronts. I know it's important to the players, and they'd like to play in the Olympics, but certain things are going to have to be done by some combination of the International Olympic Committee, the International Ice Hockey Federation, and the local organizing committee in order for that to be a reality. And if they do those things, which is not a whole lot dissimilar to what's been done in the past, then we'll be happy to go. with respect to a World Cup, you know, and it's something that we've been very clear about, we want to bring it back on a regular schedule. It's something we do in partnership with the Players Association, and for a whole host of reasons, we need a little more time to put it together. Some of those reasons are pretty obvious, but we're going to get to it, and we hope to get it done. Again, I'm not sure of the context of the travel agency. We tend to make our own arrangements, but under the circumstances, we don't pay for the players to go to the Olympics. You want to add anything?
I think most importantly, we were aligned with the IHF yesterday in our conversation as to what the issues are and what needs to be done. So
Yeah.
we're in lockstep on that.
And we have a very good working relationship with Luke, and you know, we think he's off to a really good start in terms of what he's doing at the IHF.
Second row on the left.
Gary, I guess the next big event down here would theoretically be an outdoor game. Is that something you envision?
In South Florida?
Or somewhere in Florida. Is that something you envision at some point?
It's
a possibility?
something that we are taking a look at. Obviously, weather is a potential issue. Today may be a good example. If we had an outdoor game to play today, it could be a problem. But it is something we're exploring. You know, we've tried a variety of new and interesting things. We've played a game in Los Angeles. We're going to play an outdoor game in Carolina. And if we think we can, with great likelihood, accomplish it, we might try it, but we're not there yet.
Kevin in front.
Gary, if I can come back to the pride issue, when you say that you have to acknowledge, you know, the wide range of opinions and respect that, it sounds on the outside like you're accepting bigotry.
No, not at all. I think you're taking the bridge too far. Whether or not you choose to embrace and make a statement on behalf of a cause affirmatively, if you choose not to do that, doesn't necessarily make you a bigot. I'm sure you don't endorse every single charity that solicits you, and you don't participate in every social cause. You pick and choose the ones that are important to you. The ones you don't choose to do don't necessarily make you bigoted, misogynistic, or homophobic, or racist.
But when Ivan Provorov doesn't participate in the warm-up because he doesn't want to wear the jersey,
Right.
That's like the first time that's happened as far as I can tell, and it seems like the thin edge of the wedge. I know it's a political issue that hasn't really been a political issue for years, but it is now. Are you worried that you're alienating the very people you're trying to appeal to?
We're trying to be open, welcoming, and inclusive. And within parameters, being welcoming and diverse and inclusive requires to a line, which gets drawn in each case, that you're tolerant to a point of various views. You want to add to that?
Nope.
Good.
Back left, Mike.
Gary, Bill, just with the reported bankruptcy for Sinclair, how are you, how concerned is this right now for the league in terms of these regional networks, the rights fees, and the impact that's going to make economically on the league?
The impact to the league, based on how much the Sinclair regionals pay, is not very large relative to approaching almost $6 billion in revenues. However, for the clubs involved, obviously it will have a serious impact. You know, we're in regular touch with the people running the Sinclair regionals now. They are suggesting that there isn't an imminent financial crisis, that they're trying to reorganize their business and move forward effectively, and so that the clubs will continue to get paid and the games will continue to be distributed. But we are obviously monitoring it very closely and exploring, at least theoretically, what the options may be in the event the worst were to happen. It's clear that the regional sports business in this era of cord cutting and cord nevering is one that is facing some challenges, and with streaming and other alternatives, there will be an evolution of how games are distributed. And that's something, obviously, we're very focused on. I mean, when you go back and you look at the evolution of streaming and digital platforms, when we made our Rogers deal, I don't know, I guess 8 years ago, we included certain digital rights in anticipation of the fact that there may be alternative ways to distribute games. So, you know, we're monitoring it and we'll deal with it, I think is the best way to say it. But based on what we're being told to date, nothing is imminent. Wanna add?
And the solution may not necessarily involve a bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Chris Johnson?
Hi, Gary. A couple of players here mentioned that they're not fans of the current playoff format or that they would like something different. I'm just wondering, when you hear those sort of things, would that make you at least have a discussion at the board level or something about a change?
Well, actually, there is a competition committee, and we have discussions about the game all the time, and that's actually the best place to talk about it. I thought the Athletic did a poll, and it was 14 against and 2 in favor of having a play-in round. You know, the debate of 1 versus 8, then it's not just that. You've got to also look at then changing the wild card, and you've got to start looking at the matchups in terms of how many times everybody's playing everybody else if you're having conference-based playoffs. So it's not as simple as saying I'd like 1 versus 8 versus what we have. It involves a whole host of other issues that have to be addressed.
And by the way, since the last time we polled the general managers on this, which was only 2 years ago, 2/3 of them favored keeping the playoff system the way it is. Doesn't mean you don't revisit it, talk about it again, but this is not some burning issue out there.
But to be clear, we do value the input from the players, and it's something we get through the competition committee, and it's something that we get on an informal basis when players come through New York and sometimes stop by our office to do media. They come and visit Bill and me, and we close the door, and we kind of have an off-the-record conversation to see what's on their mind. So we're very grateful for the input that we get.
Back left, Frank?
Gary, given the potential record interest in guest attendance this weekend, I was wondering if you've given any thought to potentially putting All-Star Weekend on a rotation of select cities moving forward.
Having major league events is something that's important to all of our franchises. And in terms of the markets in which we bring those events, it's a really big deal. And so we think it's good to move things around.
Right side?
Gary, there's been kind of some player conversation about the overtime and the 5 minutes, the 3-on-3, and David said 10 minutes would be great. Where do you kind of fall on the overtime 3-on-3 length right now?
I've had conversations with a couple of players on the subject, including Connor. And the fact of the matter is, you can't look at that in a vacuum. So first of all, I think 71% of the games that go into overtime are decided during the 3-on-3, which means so far this season, I may be a little off by a game or two. I think 50 games have gone to the shootout. If you're going to go to 10, you got to worry about the ice, right? We shovel it off, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable playing a full 10 minutes without flooding the ice again. And the first and second line players are going to be doing the workload and maybe subject to more wear and tear. And so if you're thinking about doing an extra 5 minutes, you got a whole lot of other considerations that you've got to weigh in on before you do it. I mean, theoretically, the great thing about our game and our fans and our players and all of you is everybody's thinking about the game. What can we do to tweak it? What can we do to make a difference? And that's great, but things aren't a one-off. I have this saying, which may drive some people, particularly those who work with me at the league office, crazy. Everything's related to everything else, so you just can't look at things as a one-off. Good.
Second row on the left.
See, after my faux pas on the date, I got to make sure everything I'm saying is either correct or I'm not leaving something out. It is 2023, isn't it? Go ahead.
On the left, Andrew.
Yeah,
Hi,
Gary,
Andrew.
Bill, any thoughts on the issue of the facial recognition with Mr. Dolan and Madison Square Garden? And do you guys consider that a league issue, or is that just a particular franchise issue?
You can answer that.
So I think in response to the last part of your question, it really is a franchise issue. Obviously, if what was being done there, and it's done for security reasons, If what was being done there was offended some kind of league policy or some law, it might be a different issue, but as far as we know, it doesn't. So at this stage, it's not anything that concerns us.
Second row on the right, Nick.
Just for Gary or Bill, the league has added so many events, right? Outdoor games, international events. How does All-Star fit now? Why is it still important? And how do you view, is it a different audience a little bit than some of the other events?
All-Star is an opportunity in the middle of the season to take a break, to bring the NHL family together, and to have fun. And that's what it's all about. And when our guests who come in increasing numbers, no matter where we're playing, have a great time. It's an opportunity to do business. The players have a great time getting together. It's all about having a good time and, you know, connecting with our fans in yet another way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back left, Steve.
I think Kevin Wiggs was tweeting something about Australia in the preseason next year. I don't know if that's in the cards. Is that
Kevin's going to Australia in
are
the
there preseason games in Australia? Is Australia on the calendar? All-Star 2025? Maybe, I don't know.
I thought we're not a travel agency. Go ahead.
Have we been approached numerous times over many years by promoters in Australia who'd love to bring NHL games over there? Absolutely. Has any final decision been made in that regard? No.
But we promise to make an announcement if we decide to go.
Front left, wait for the mic.
Yeah.
Alan Greenberg, given the huge number of corporate sponsorships, how does All-Star Weekend stack up as a revenue producer for the league?
The weekend itself doesn't really generate net revenues. It generates gross revenues. It's part of being a sponsor is you get to come here and celebrate with us and have the weekend. But when you look at what's entailed in us throwing this weekend-long party and the parties we throw, it's a very expensive endeavor. So we don't do this to make money. We do it as part of an overall reason to be a part of the NHL family if you're a business partner. And, you know, we bring in the players and we put on a show and we have Fallout Boys here and there'll be, you know, other events. We have other rock groups. It's all part of, I guess, what they call branding. And this is part of ensuring that people view us in a certain way, which is a big deal as a sports league.
Back right corner.
Tom McLeod. Mr. Bettman, how would you answer six-time NHL All-Star goalie Dominik Hasek, who has said that the most essential and saddest thing about this game, as well as the entire season, is that it will be a huge advertisement for the Russian war and Russian crimes in Ukraine?
Dominik Hasek has been a vocal critic for the last year or so, and he's entitled to his opinion. I don't think he speaks either for the Czech government or people, but he is entitled to his opinion. Which I disagree with, by the way, but just so the record's clear.
All the way in the back on the left.
Mr. Commissioner, what conclusions do you pull from the report last week about ratings being down on television, but then being up on social media and activity? What conclusions do you draw from that?
Let's not get too carried away with ratings because viewership overall is up nationally. So start with that. You can explain the ESPN ratings very simply. They're carrying twice as many games, and with our consent, they're putting us up against NFL football, and so we knew what the impact would be. We're going to have a number of games later in the season on ABC, and it'll reverse itself, and we'll probably be back to even or up. And if you took out the extra games, so we're on an apples-to-apples basis, I think we're within 2 or 3% on the ratings, so not an issue. TNT, on their schedule, has decided to take a number of games that are blacked out locally. Well, that's obviously going to have a ratings impact because if you compare them to games last season that weren't blacked out locally, it would be down. Our ratings are fine, and if you talk to TNT or ESPN, who's here with us this weekend, putting today's game on ABC. Last night was on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Both our partners tell us that they are thrilled, and we are thrilled with the job that they are doing for us. Social media is up. Well, you know, that to me I take as a really good sign, particularly as to how we're connecting with millennials and Gen Zs, who tend to be the cord cutters. And by the way, going back to the regional question, with all the cord cutting and issues that regionals may be having in terms of their distribution, our viewership on the regionals is flat, even with all the cord cutting. And that's across our teams.
I think in terms of unique viewers, we're up 27% from last year and 3.4 million. So viewership's up. We're fine.
Back to Chris.
I'm just wondering, can you provide any sort of update on where things stand with the Ottawa Senators sale process?
Yeah, actually, there are 15 or more people or groups of people who have filed applications. The data room was open, and my guess is at some point in the next few weeks or so, there'll be a preliminary cut based on preliminary bids, but the process is being run directly with the potential purchasers through Galeotto Sports Partners, which is Sal Galeotto, and I want to be clear that whoever buys this club is doing so to keep it in Ottawa. So I say that so there's no speculation on the point, and there may be a great opportunity to take the team downtown to LeBreton Flats, which I think makes this an even more exciting opportunity to own a team in the nation's capital.
Hang on one second, Kev. Back left, Frank.
You hinted at the significant business that's on the NHLPA's plate at the moment.
I didn't build it.
Given the reports, do either of you, have you met Marty Walsh? Do you have a relationship with him? And just a comment on how that process has unfolded.
We're not going to comment on how the process is unfolding. I'm not going to comment on who may or may not be the next executive director. It would be inappropriate. And if I went far enough, could violate the federal labor laws. The fact of the matter is we're very respectful of what the players are doing. They're going to conduct the process for a new executive director as they see fit, and whoever it is we'll work with. I've met Marty a couple of times when he was the mayor of Boston, but beyond that, there's nothing to add.
On the left, Dan.
An update, if you don't mind, on the
You didn't just get called on, but so.
No, I'm
is-
sorry. That was my fault. You go, Kevin.
Blame him, not me.
An update, if you can, on the state of the investigation into the NHL players that were part of the 2018 World Junior team.
I've answered the question about 100 times. Why don't you try?
Look, we're getting close to a conclusion, but we're not there yet. We don't feel any particular time pressure. We want to do it right. There are multiple other bodies who are investigating the same thing and have done over a longer period of time, quite frankly. So, again, I think we're substantially complete, but we're not there yet. And when we have something done, well, I'm sure you guys will find out about it.
Okay, Dan, you can go.
Gary, what has the response been for the outdoor game in Raleigh locally, and what do you think the impact could be for that there?
The game sold out really quickly. I don't have the time frame, but I was surprised at how quickly it was sold out. Steve, tickets sold out and it went quickly. Like, I don't know whether or not that's 20 minutes or 2 days or whatever, but one of the fastest sellouts. The enthusiasm for the game is great. Steve is going to outdo himself with the event group, as he always does, and we're excited to be going there. This is a franchise under Tom Dundon that clearly has been on the rise, both on and off the ice. It's great to see, and we love being in the Triangle, and we're looking forward to the game.
Back left.
Afternoon, just in the back left here, guys. With the trade deadline coming up, would there ever be a discussion, or is there a discussion with having a trade deadline with no games on that day to make it easier for teams?
We certainly are cognizant of that. Sometimes the trade deadline is not formally established until well after the schedule is made. But we have been flexible in recent years with the Players Association and trying from a game standpoint, because we've had situations in the past where there's too many games and clubs don't have enough players. So it's a consideration for sure. Whether we can actually black out a day, it becomes more difficult.
Time for a couple of more. Middle right.
With we talked about the linear stuff, but with the ESPN Plus and the streaming, and is there a way that you've been able to quantify success or not success on that? Because that's something that is very in-house, and then kind of on top of that, you have the digital rights with the Turner HBO deal as well.
Yeah.
Is there a space where that's going in the future?
Well, they haven't indicated that it's immediate in terms of HBO Plus. This is on your Turner question. On ESPN Plus, the number of people who are watching our games on ESPN Plus, and the best comparison we have is the out-of-market package, which was NHL.TV. I think the number of viewers is like double of what it used to be, and people are having no trouble finding us on ESPN Plus. And when we put NHL.TV into ESPN Plus, it was pretty consumer friendly, because if you subscribe to ESPN Plus and you get all those games, you're getting all those games plus all the other ESPN Plus programming, and it's half to two-thirds of what you were paying for NHL.TV. So I think we've been on the forefront of dealing with what is becoming the reality, which is streaming live programming and live content, but the games have been well received and well watched.
Is there any way to quantify it where you can say X, we've got getting
I
X
think
amount
we
more
can-
watching the game or anything like that?
I'm not sure to the extent that ESPN Plus makes that data available, but I think we'll have a better sense once we get through this season, and we can compare to last season as well. But in addition, the number of subscribers to ESPN Plus since we joined is up dramatically, like double-digit millions. So it's been a plus for them and it's been a plus for us.
But you see that data, right?
What?
But you see the data, right?
Yes, but, I'd like to keep seeing the data. And if I, and if I start leaking the data, I may not get to see the data. But I got to see what they're comfortable with, and that's something we'll focus on, because that's a good question.
Take three more. Go ahead, on the aisle and left.
With All-Star games, what's the calculus on host cities? I mean, are there a bunch of bidders usually?
Yeah.
With Toronto, what was the pros and cons of going there?
Well, some of the pros, well, first of all, and Brendan and Mitch talked about it, being in Toronto where hockey is so important. We may not have 80-degree temperature, but we've got real intensity in one of the great hockey markets in the world. We have places that want games, but other things impact when they want it. Is it a new arena, part of a project that isn't complete yet, and they want to wait to have the All-Star game until it's complete? Is there a particular anniversary that wants to be celebrated? So we work with the clubs that are expressing a short-term interest, say the next 4 or 5 years, to see when they want it, and then we try and fill in the gaps.
Go ahead, Mark.
Very similar to how we do stadium series and
outdoor
classics.
games.
Yeah.
And drafts. I mean, that's all part of how Steve, I have nothing to do with it. He's responsible. It's all his fault if you don't know. It's part of what goes into Steve's looking at various options that we have. He goes on site visits regularly, so we know what the state of play is.
Chicago was such a revenue generator for the league for so long. Excuse me. I know tanking doesn't exist, but when you have a major market like this, going through this process, is there a tangible impact on league revenue when you have a major, an original six big city team kind of going through this lengthy process?
The reports of their economic demise are greatly exaggerated on a whole host of platforms, whether it's their local TV revenues, their sponsorship revenues, and even their attendance in terms of how they're doing fine. And remember, we're now just about approaching, give or take, $6 billion in revenues. One club performance better or worse doesn't dramatically change that.
All right, Steve, you go last.
Coley over there, and it reminded me of 2001, the Niedermeyer Domi play when the horn went. That was you. That was eye in the sky. So we talked yesterday in our one-on-one about adding to a coach's challenge, the friendly fire Capital Toronto game. Were you alluding to that it would be on the agenda, or something like that would have to be brought up? We have exceptional status for elite players, so in a moment of Stephen Walkom being upstairs in case something went really wrong in a final.
Well, the question that I'm being asked is, while we review the double minor on high sticking, could we review a 2-minute high stick to see it was friendly fire? My view on that is, if we were to do it, that should be a coach's challenge. And it's something that, Coley makes up the agenda with the assistance of the general manager at the GM's meeting, and we'll see if there's a real interest in discussing it. It's a very democratic process. Anybody else? Or are we done? We're done. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the game. And thank you all for being here with us.